President Trump has invited Prime Minister Netanyahu for an unprecedented fifth visit to the White House since taking office. And in this video, we're going to talk about what they're actually going to discuss and what is at stake. But first, some background. Last week, Israel carried out airstrikes in southern Syria in the town of Beit Jin. We talked about that in a previous video. They were going after some terrorists who were there. And in response to Israel's actions, President Trump put out a post on Truth Social criticizing Israel, essentially calling on Israel to restrain itself. President Trump warned Israel against destabilizing the Syrian regime. Quote, "It is very important that Israel maintain a strong and true dialogue with Syria, and that nothing takes place that will interfere with Syria's evolution into a prosperous state." Trump also wrote that he is, quote, "very satisfied with Syria's performance under Ahmed Ashara, who is, of course, a former ISIS and al-Qaeda terrorist." Now, President Trump then called Prime Minister Netanyahu, and what was reported in the media from the call is that he invited Netanyahu to Washington, D.C. But just the other day, Tamir Morag, the senior political correspondent for Channel 14 cable news in Israel, revealed more details of what was said in that phone call. Have a look.
פרטים חדשים בנוגע לשיחה בין ראש הממשלה נתניהו לנשיא טראמפ שנערכה שלשום בערב. במהלך השיחה, הנשיא פונה לראש הממשלה ומבקש ממנו לשקול בשנית את סוגיית נוכחותם של כוחות טורקיים ברצועת עזה במסגרת הכוח הבינלאומי. נתניהו, אמנם בשפה דיפלומטית, דוחה את הבקשה של טראמפ.
So Trump is pressuring Netanyahu to allow Turkish troops into the Gaza Strip to be part of the International Stabilization Force. And it's also been reported recently that the Turks are actually hoping that President Trump can convince Prime Minister Netanyahu to allow them in. And it's really interesting that Turkey wants to be part of this, is eager to be part of the International Stabilization Force in Gaza, while all the recent reports are that most of the other nations who originally committed to being part of it are trying to back out and get out of the whole ISF. We saw recently that King Abdullah of Jordan was being very hesitant and saying that maybe Jordan won't be part of it at all, and maybe we'll only have a kind of training and advisory role. The Indonesians and the Pakistanis are also hemming and hawing, and they're not sure if they want to be part of it, and yet Turkey is so eager to be involved. Now, why are these other nations backing out of the ISF? What are the reasons they give? So one of them, of course, what they say publicly is that they don't want to confront Hamas. But what has been less reported, but is perhaps even a more important reason they don't want to be involved, is that the prominent involvement of the Qataris and the Turks in the plans, in the U.S. plans for the Gaza Strip, is scaring them away. You see, let's just review. The Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization according to Saudi Arabian law, also in the United Arab Emirates and Jordan and Egypt and other moderate Arab nations. The Muslim Brotherhood is declared a terrorist organization, and the Muslim Brotherhood is housed and funded by Turkey and Qatar. Turkey and Qatar are essentially Muslim Brotherhood nations. So there has long been tension in the Middle East between the Saudis and the Emiratis, the moderate Arab states that want peaceful engagement with the West, and the Turks and the Qataris. This almost came to an actual kinetic shooting war back in 2017. There was an extended blockade of Qatar by the Saudis and its partners because of Qatar's support for the Muslim Brotherhood and its support for other terrorist organizations. So there's this ongoing tension between this Turkey-Qatar partnership and the moderate Arab states. The moderate Arab states see that the Qataris and the Turks are ostensibly going to be involved in what goes on in the Gaza Strip, in the reconstruction, or in the International Stabilization Force, and they want no part of it because they don't want to cooperate with Turkey and Qatar. Now, why does Turkey want to be a part of it? Do they really want to go up against Hamas? Of course not. They're major supporters of Hamas. Erdogan praises Hamas as freedom fighters on a regular basis. The reason that the Turks want to be part of the International Stabilization Force is that they are looking to become a regional superpower. You see, the Turks already have control of Syria because Ahmed Ashara, the new president of Syria, let's remember, is a Turkish proxy, he's a Turkish asset. His terrorist group, HTS, which brought down the Assad regime and brought him to power, is funded and armed by the Turks. And we also recently spoke about the fact that the Turks are rebuilding the Syrian military. Just last month, the Israelis carried out airstrikes in Syria to take out new air defenses, surface-to-air missile defenses, which were being installed by the Turks in southern Syria. So again, the Turks already have a foothold in Syria. They basically have taken control of that country through their proxy, and they want to be in Gaza. Being in Gaza would give them an important foothold and put them in Israel's backyard, in their territory, and also on the Egyptian border. Now, at the same time as all this is going on, it's very interesting to note that the Israelis are in the process of concluding a major defense deal with Greece. Israel is about to sell Greece $3.5 billion worth of air defenses, which is not just selling them equipment. The Israelis are going to be helping them install these air defenses in the Greek islands, but it's also going to include commitments to longer-term security and defense partnership between Greece and Israel. And the Greeks have been very upfront, very transparent about the fact that the reason that they are purchasing these new defense systems from Israel is because of their concern about the rising threat of Turkey, which they see as a hostile neighbor that is only getting more hostile. Now, at the same time, the Qataris are pressuring Israel and pressuring the Trump administration to pressure Israel to move forward to the next stage of Trump's 20-point plan in Gaza, even though Hamas has violated the first stage of the agreement, even though Hamas is refusing to disarm. Qatar wants to push the next stage where things start to be rebuilt and we already start moving towards an international stabilization force without disarming Hamas, because that would mean that behind the yellow line in the Hamas-controlled territory, Hamas would remain in power. That's ultimately Qatar's goal for Gaza, is to make sure that Hamas remains in power. We should also add that if the Turks become the leaders of the international stabilization force, which, again, Israel is absolutely refusing, but if the Turks were to become the lead actors in the international stabilization force, there is no doubt that whatever security system they set up, whatever local Arab Palestinians they would involve in their security services in Gaza would be Hamas. So what's really going on here? Well, think back to before October 7th. Israel's primary threats on its borders and regionally came from Iran. On the northern border, Israel had Hezbollah. On the southern border, Israel had Hamas, both of them proxies of the Iranians. Now, Turkey is trying to replace Iran as the Islamist threat on Israel's borders through its proxies. One in the north, that would be Syria, Ashara. They're trying to rebuild his military. And in the south, they're trying to take control of the security situation in Gaza. And if they would succeed in both of those initiatives, while right now, yes, Hamas is quite weak and the world's eyes are on the attempts at peace. And in Syria, they are trying to rebuild things, and we wouldn't expect any hostilities right now while they're trying to conclude arrangements with the Trump administration. But this is a long-term play. The Trump administration is not going to be in power forever. And if the Turks could get entrenched successfully in both Syria and the Gaza Strip, even if it means laying low militarily till the end of the Trump administration, they would then, in a long-term way, become the new Islamic threat right on Israel's borders with terrorist proxies at their disposal. Now, this Qatari-Turkish partnership, which is working closely with the Trump administration, is really the root of a lot of problems. It is scaring away the moderate regional actors. You see them backing away from wanting to be involved. Emiratis have said this explicitly, that they don't want to be involved in anything on the ground that involves the Qataris. The Saudis have also expressed similar about both them and the Turks. And at the same time, Israel is fortifying its military dominance, both by taking out these air defenses that were trying to be installed in Syria, by taking out the rearming of Hezbollah in Lebanon, and also by insisting that there will be no Turkish troops on the ground in the Gaza Strip. Before we go on, be sure to go into the description of this video and download the free ebook that's available there. It is a collection of articles, of columns that I've written that really provide my analysis since the beginning of the October 7th war, and it'll really give you a window into what we've been through since the war began. So go ahead and download that. Now back to the video. So now let's talk about the Netanyahu-Trump meeting that's going to take place in the next few weeks. There is no doubt that that Turkey will be a major subject of the conversation. Prime Minister Netanyahu must hold firm in his absolute refusal to allow the Turks to have any significant role on the ground in the Gaza Strip. Their motives are clear. If you look at the entire region, they are trying to become a regional superpower, and the Israelis must prevent that from happening. What Israel needs and what Israel wants is for the actual moderate Arab nations, like the Emirates, like the Saudis, those Arab nations that are currently seeking peaceful engagement and economic engagement with both Israel and the West, those Arab nations that identify the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the ideological backbone of both Turkey and Qatar, as terrorists. We need to empower those nations and bring them into the fold. If the Emiratis and the Saudis were leading the reconstruction effort and the international stabilization force in the Gaza Strip, that is a situation that would be very favorable to Israel and very favorable to peace and prosperity going forward. But if the Turks and the Qataris end up having their way, all it means is that we've switched out the Iranian Shiite threat for a Sunni Muslim Brotherhood Qatari Turkish threat. The Trump administration needs to wake up and back away from this close, intimate relationship with the Qataris and the Turks, who are agents of instability and terrorism. The Trump administration must return to embracing the regional actors who actually want peaceful engagement. If not, there will only be more failure of Trump's policies and more conflict and terrorism in the Middle East going forward. Again, Prime Minister Netanyahu has to hold firm, and that's the only way we are going to secure peace in the Middle East.